Above all, it is craftsmanship that turned Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 into the game that it is. This game has some characteristics that are largely unique to it, more so if we account for the scale in which they are implemented at. But the broad strokes, those that shape the outline of the experience, are nothing that we haven't seen before. An open, lived-in world, abundant side content, a rich, moving, and cinematic narrative, all wrapped up in the same ribbon that we see tied around a plethora of RPGs from the last decade. But what makes this game so special is that every one of these aspects was crafted with enough thoroughness and care that they not only feel individualistically masterful, but also as if they come together to form an experience so airtight and focused that it is yet unrivaled in the industry. Kingdom Come Deliverance does content right, and it implements that content in a way that serves a three-pronged vision. 1. Grounded cinematic storytelling. 2. A highly believable and accurate setting filled with meaningful and memorable characters, locations, and quests. And 3. Systems that force the player to embrace downtime, think for themselves, and thoughtfully engage with the world and story. These three prongs exist as their own individual pieces, and we can analyze them as such. But what makes the experience so special is the way that they integrate themselves into each other so tightly that each of them helps to prop up and enhance the others. And if even one of them were to drop in quality, the overall product would feel disproportionately less refined. So how exactly does Kingdom Come 2 accomplish this integration? To answer this, we are going to need to break down what makes each of these three prongs so captivating, starting with the foundation, the world. Two of the buzzwords that you might see floating around this game are realism and immersion, and these are terms that serve the game's world design well. One of the most notable things about it is how little individual environments tend to stand out. Most things within each region of Trotsky and Kuttenberg kind of look the same. Grassy fields and hills and dense forests rule the majority of the countryside, with the occasional farmland or village spaced intermittently. If you took separate screenshots at each end of the playable world, you could be forgiven for thinking at first glance that they might be locations that are right next to each other. Things in this game are very unassuming in that way. There isn't a ton of eye-catching set pieces or grandiose vistas, and the ones that are there are further heightened and made to stand out by just how normal everything else feels. But these locations feeling normal does not mean that they are uninteresting. There is a certain handcrafted feel to the wilderness in KCD2. I can't speak as to whether or not it is handcrafted, but when you walk through the woods or off the beaten path, you start to realize just how much diversity there actually is. No two patches of forest look the same. If the first one has a clearing full of herbs, then the next one will have a boar hunting spot, and the one after that will have an unmarked grave that in some way ties into some kind of story. Not everything you find is actual real content, but there is still uniqueness, logic, and meaning in the world, and it's got this simplistic beauty to it. Much of the same rhetoric can be applied to the characters that inhabit this world. Living, breathing settings are something that RPGs have been able to do decently well for quite a while now. But KCD2 heightens this accomplishment by being extremely thorough and consistent with its characters and quests. There is not a single side quest that I remember doing in this game that I didn't feel had some sort of nuance or surprise to it. There was no collect item from point A and bring it to point B. This might have been the start or the overarching structure of a few of them, but that was never how the quests actually went. There was always some sort of catch or hiccup that made it unique and distinctive, and also made both the characters and the quest itself memorable. This means that the characters never just felt like quest givers, they felt like people, and the problems that they had and the things they needed help with just always felt so normal. Help an old man get revenge on a rival village by playing pranks on its residents. Help a woman obtain a thunderstone that is said to protect her house from misfortune. Assist a bathhouse owner in getting her establishment in shape so that she doesn't have to pay extra taxes. And when the quests didn't feel explicitly normal, they still felt believable, like real problems that a real person could actually have, with real motivations and real stakes. One that sticks out in my mind is the Fifth Commandment. In this quest, we help Henry's friend investigate the killings of several young women. We learn that the killings were actually performed by the servant of our original suspect's mother. The quest told the story of a noble woman who would go to any lengths to protect the reputation of her name and family, and of her loyal friend who truly believed in her. It's not a quest where anybody is doing anything that we can consider good, but it is a quest where everyone is doing something for a reason. And it's the complex systems of the game that force the player to actually engage with all of this rich content and world building. One of the most famous parts of the Kingdom Come series, especially from the outside looking in, is that it's got all of these life simulator elements baked into it. Regardless of difficulty or mode, Henry has basic needs that you have to take care of. If you don't eat, sleep, and bathe, you will become less effective at pretty much everything from combat to sneaking to talking to people. While it might seem tedious at first, these systems actually force the player to engage with the game on a whole new level. Most games don't like to force downtime on the player. They always want you to be doing something, but Kingdom Come 2 actually embraces downtime in a way like no other. Here's a scenario that the game throws you into very early on. You're out of money, effectively homeless, and have nobody that can help you and nowhere to go. But you still need to take care of your needs, so what do? You start talking to people. You start asking around, looking for leads on work or for places to get some money or sleep. And suddenly you have taken on a job as a blacksmith's apprentice just because it came with a free bed and a place to put your extra gear. You start plotting the routes to your next quest based on which road is going to take you past the bathhouse so that you can get your clothes washed, and you make yourself get back home a little earlier than usual in the evening so that you have time to smith a sword that you can make some money off of. These systems that might seem mundane at first end up encouraging the player to engage with all of the characters and content that this game is filled with. This feeling is further emphasized when playing on Hardcore mode. Hardcore mode does a few things, most of which I think vastly improve the experience. The most impactful thing is how it limits your navigation. Hardcore mode removes your compass and quest markers, but more importantly it removes your player icon on the map, and gets rid of your ability to fast travel. This means that to actually get to your next task, you have to start using markers you find around the world and try to match them up with the map. This has the result of leaving you so intimately familiar with the world that by the time you spend 40 hours in each area, you're more or less able to navigate entirely on your own. When an NPC tells you the name of a village, you already know what that village is. When they mention a hut at the north end of a pond, you already know exactly where it is because you have used it as a navigational aid 5 times already. This is the most impressive way that Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 immerses you in its world, by incorporating systems that encourage you to engage with it, and by putting limits on the player that make engaging in those systems feel consistently rewarding and worth your time. And as you engage with these systems, you feel yourself developing and growing alongside Henry. You don't just statistically become better at things in this game. There is enough nuance and execution involved in every aspect that the player themselves actually gets better at accomplishing these tasks. What feels overwhelming and slow at the start, say something like brewing a bunch of potions, ends up becoming so ingrained as part of the experience that you develop the personal skill set needed to make it much less of a chore. And as you get better at these things, so does Henry. So the game naturally weans itself away from the tedium as long as you consistently engage with these systems. This ends up turning the grind into an actually rewarding experience. But not all of the systems in this game have the same effort to reward curve, namely the combat. Combat is one of the more controversial aspects of the game, and I believe that there is truth to a lot of the criticisms. Combat in KCD2 is vastly improved from the first game, but unfortunately it does still have its problems. The Master Strike is back, and it's very, very easy to get, which means that you're able to pretty much cheese every combat encounter, especially 1v1s, from a pretty early point in the game. The Master Strike has been rebalanced to be a little bit more difficult than it was in the previous game, but it's still really not that hard to pull off. One of the strong points is the combo system, which lets you chain different directional attacks into combos that stagger or otherwise break through an opponent's defenses. These two mechanics tend to feel somewhat at odds with each other. The combos, matched with the fact that many of the enemies in the game are able to use Master Strikes on the player, actually do form a pretty interesting and dynamic basis for combat, but it suffers due to poor balancing between group encounters and solo ones. Against multiple enemies, the Master Strike becomes less powerful. This is because to execute a Master Strike, you need to be attacking your enemy from the opposite side of his attack. When multiple enemies are attacking you at once, this tends to be inconsistent. But combos also don't feel particularly good in group combat because it's actually pretty difficult to get off enough hits for the combo to activate when multiple enemies are attacking you. But then in one-on-one combat, when you would think that the combos would be more reliable, Master Strikes become so easy that there is little reason to not just spam them. So unfortunately, what feels like an otherwise good base structure for combat gets destabilized by making one type of combat too trivial and the other too tedious. Despite all this, I don't think that the combat is really all that bad. These are issues, but it still manages to feel satisfying and tactical enough, especially on hardcore mode, that it is still fun most of the time. And combat isn't the entire game, so when you aren't engaged in the combat, you are engaged in the other parts, be that the systems grind, the rich side content, or the main story. Which is a story that I was actually very impressed with. Spoiler warning for this game and the first one going forward, but Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 serves as far as I can tell, a definitive ending to the story for Henry of Skalitz. In the first game, we watch as Henry finds his purpose, however misguided, and tries to carve a place for himself in this world. And in the second game, we get to see him fulfill that purpose and come to grips with what life might look like for him. The biggest narrative deviation from the first game is that in this game, Henry really starts to plot out his own path and make his own decisions. Even if the end goal of the journey is always pretty clear, the twists and turns that we take along the way are much less defined. At the end of the original game and at the start of this one, it feels that Henry has embraced and fallen into his role as the page to Sirhan's Capon, but his fealty is quickly tested when things go awry for them. He finds himself standing up to Hans, who does not take it lightly, and then is forced to tread his own path in order to find a way to finish the mission he had set out to accomplish. This is a general structure that is repeated throughout multiple points of the story. The player is given a goal, but they are not given a straightforward way of solving it, and are instead presented with multiple options to approach the task at hand, which is where the main story is able to tie into the other two prongs of the design. In these breathing moments, the other aspects of the game are able to shine through and incorporate themselves into the overall experience. The story is not the most choice and consequence-driven narrative in the world. This is one of the few blemishes. There are systems-level consequences. For instance, if you spend a night robbing every store in Kuttenberg, people will be on edge for the next little while and be more suspicious of things. There is also an insane level of approach and interactivity. Pretty much any idea you think of to solve a problem is doable, and as long as it accomplishes something, it will end up working out one way or another. But this same amount of choice, consequence, and approachability isn't really present in the main narrative. For starters, this game follows the all-too-common convention of only having a few major decisions affect the ending, and having all of said decisions congested into the late stages of the game. And ultimately, those decisions don't drastically change what kind of ending you get. There is a good and bad ending, but they don't really differ that much from each other, and I don't think they have any real effect on what you can take away from the story. But despite all of this, the story is still masterfully told. A big part of this comes down to the extremely high-quality cinematics. The main story is full of big moments and unique cutscenes, and it is surprisingly moving. As we guide Henry through this journey, we witness moments of hope, deceit, betrayal, revenge, and potentially even forgiveness. The characters we meet give us reasons to both love and hate them, and the adventures that we undertake with them showcase the bonds between all parties involved. And the close of the story is executed in a way that reflects upon so many of the moments that we experienced throughout. All in all, the narrative was very well written, the characters felt real and genuine, and it was all tied together through rich cinematics and engaging storytelling that made it something we can remember. This overall experience truly serves as a swan song of the modern sandbox RPG. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is a game that knows its limits, and instead of cutting corners or making obtuse design choices to go beyond those limits, it decides instead to highly refine all of the things that fit within its borders. In many ways, this game serves as the next evolution of the Bethesda game. It is a vibrant and interactive open-world sandbox, but it is further heightened by the care that is put into its cinematics and storytelling, and the game fully embraces a very clear vision and pulls no punches in achieving that vision. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is not only a work of passion, but it is a display of masterful craftsmanship in regards to the video game medium, and it is a game that will go down in history as a work not only of understanding, but of expertise and of art.